And at first I thought I would try to answer those questions, paying respect to my grandmother's memory. I would try to find a Jewish community where I could answer those questions. But the communities that I found, and again, I was just 18 or 19 years old at the time, the communities that I found were not satisfactory to me. And I asked the question, which I had asked many times as a child, is God only the God of the Jews? There are only 20 million Jews in the world, and yet there are billions and billions of other people. God created them also, right? So I began to study on my own. I began to read the Bible. And that summer, when I was in England, I was there for an internship. There were some Christians, some evangelical Christians, who sort of approached me and wanted to socialize. Of course, they also wanted me to accept their faith. I thought, okay, why not try Christianity? I've never really thought about it. And in reading the Bible, I came to develop a very strong feeling of love and respect for Jesus. But that extra leap that they wanted me to make, to accept Jesus as my Lord and my Savior, was not one that I could do. Jesus for me was more like a big brother. Jesus for me was more like a teacher. Jesus for me was a Jew. And I couldn't accept the claims that they were making about him. But as I said, I did develop a very strong feeling of affection towards him. I thought, okay, I'm not going to find any answers to my questions. On my own, I studied other things. I studied Eastern philosophies, Buddhism. I read the Upanishads. I studied Western philosophies, particularly Greek and Roman Stoic philosophy. But nothing really was answering the profound questions that I had. Then one day, I was back in New York, just before I began my semester at my new school. And I was at Times Square, and this is back in the early 1990s. So Times Square was very different than it is today. It was much more seedy, kind of raw place. There were drug addicts and prostitutes, and there were all sorts of religious preachers. And I remember speaking to one guy. I always love to talk to people about religion, often as a skeptic. And there was one guy who was a Jew for Jesus. And he was telling me what he believed, and I had heard it before. To me, it was basically Christianity. And he asked me if I would pray with him. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't believe what you believe. He said, do you believe in God? And I said, I think I do. And he said, then pray with me. We'll just pray to God. And he put his hand on my shoulder, closed his eyes, and started speaking to the Father. And with his eyes closed, I started to look around at where I was, and I saw at the other corner these men with long black beards, white robes, like jalabiya, white turbans. They were African or African American, but they looked like they had walked right off the pages of the Bible. They looked like Noah or Abraham or something like that. So I thought, well, I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but why not? Why not talk to them? And I went over after the Jew for Jesus finished praying. I went over to them and I asked them what they were preaching. And they told me I probably wouldn't be interested in it. And I said, why not? And they said, well, because you're the devil. I said, really? I'm the devil. And they said, well, all white men are devils. And I said, if I'm the devil, let me just ask you this one question. If I am the devil, why am I so thirsty to know God? And they explained to me that even the devil believes in God. And I asked them, I said, where did you get this knowledge? I actually knew, I mean, I had written a paper in college about Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. And so I understood that they were probably some derivative of that black nationalist movement. But I asked them what their source was for this claim of my satanic nature. And they gave me some verses from the Bible, Book of Daniel, I think. And I said, no. If I want the Bible, I can go down the street to the Jew for Jesus or to some other Christian. What about your book? Don't you read the Quran? And they said yes. And so they gave me some verse to read from Surat al-Kahf. And I took it home. I took home the paper that I wrote it on, and immediately I went up to my bookshelf where I had the Quran that was given to me about 6 years earlier by my friend Mansour. And I started reading. I looked for the passage that they had directed me to. And of course I read it, and there was no indication there that I was the devil or that any other white person was the devil. But since I started reading, I went to the beginning of the book, and I just began to read. And I read, and I read, and I read until I fell asleep with the book in my hands. And the next day, I read and I read and I read when I had some free time. And any time I had free time between classes, when I was commuting to school on the New York City subway, I was just reading the Quran. And it moved me in a way that other books hadn't. Certainly in a way that the Bible didn't. The Quran's directness and the fact that the Lord of the worlds, right, the Creator, as the book describes the author, is speaking directly to you at times, very direct way, very intimately. It moved me in a way that I had not felt before, and I can't tell you where or when exactly. I know that there were times that I would read it, and sometimes I could feel tears in my eyes and running down my face. Sometimes I would read it and the hair on my arm would stand up, or on the back of my neck. And I can't pinpoint precisely the time or the place, but at some point I think that I had realized that I was reading the words of God. Well, around New Year's of that year, this is, I guess, about 1990, January of 1990, I was out with some friends from high school. We were having coffee, and we were just talking about what was going on in our lives. They asked me, what do you believe these days? Because they knew me when I was a communist, and they knew me when I went through many different phases as a young person. And they knew me as someone who didn't really believe in anything. So they asked me, and I said, well, I believe in God. And they said, really? What God? I said, there's only one God. And they said, where did you get this from? And I said, well, for me, it was from reading the Quran. And they said, so you've been reading the Quran, so you must believe that this is the message of God and Muhammad is the messenger of God. And I said, yeah, I guess so. So they said, okay, let me get this right. You believe that there's only one God and that Muhammad is his messenger. I said, yeah, when you put it that way, I do. And they said, you're a Muslim. And I laughed. I said, I'm a Muslim? You're a Muslim. You're from Pakistan. I'm just a guy who believes in God. They said, no, you're a Muslim. If you believe that there is no God but the one God and that Muhammad is his messenger, you are a Muslim. And I was in shock. For the next few days, had to think about what that meant. And I contacted my friend Mansour, the one who had given me the Quran when I was 13 years old.